When I was 14, I got a phone call from Shelby American out in Venice, California, from Ken Miles, who was then racer and competition director for Carroll Shelby, and of course went on to win Daytona, Sebring, and race at Le Mans as in the film Ford versus Ferrari. Miles did not know I was 14, but he knew that I was a serious contender to buy a new Cobra like the one that had recently landed at a local dealership. How did this all come about? I'll tell you. Christmas 1963, my parents gave me this, a Smith Corona portable typewriter. I intended to use it for homework assignments, for writing papers, and for sending letters to companies to get information about products that were of interest to me, mainly cars. So 14-year-old me pounded out a letter to Carroll Shelby on this typewriter and sent it off to California. Less than 2 weeks after mailing the letter, Ken Miles, competition director for Shelby American, dictated this letter in response. Now, the letter wasn't mailed until April 27th, 3 more weeks later, for a pretty good reason. But Miles writes, "Dear Mr. Joy, thank you for your letter of March 31st in connection with the supply of competition vehicles and equipment. Goes into what's available, what it's going to cost, competition cars from $6,200 all the way up to $9,250 for a fully equipped race car, much like we are successfully campaigning ourselves." So great letter. And the reason it didn't get mailed right away was they had to wait till they updated the prices on this, the mimeographed competition parts sheet, which came with the same letter. Things like Coney shock absorbers, $26, plus $3 installation. Wow, those were the days. So this was really cool. Obviously, I knew who Ken Miles was from all of my reading in Road and Track and Car and Driver and Sports Car Graphic. Very famous guy. Great to have this letter, and I just thought that was pretty cool. Well, a month later, a larger manila envelope arrives with this Shelby American label and another letter from Ken Miles. "Dear Mr. Joy, I trust by now you've received the competition price list we mailed to you, and I take pleasure in enclosing a brochure on the Cobra, the street version, which can be serviced by any authorized Ford dealer, and if it needs specialist work, it lists a couple of other dealers in Connecticut that could do this. Very cordially yours, Kenneth H. Miles, competition director." And that is accompanied by this, the Pete Brock designed Cobra brochure, which we're going to detail in a separate video following this one, and the pricing and options list that accompanied it. So now I've got something that nobody else has that I know, and this is just super cool. In May of that year, shortly after this letter was sent, we moved from Windsor to a new house in West Hartford, Connecticut. And I remember one afternoon in probably late May, right around dinner time, the phone rang. My mom answers it, and she said, "It's a British-sounding man calling for you," and hands me the phone. And I went, "Well, this can't be good," right? It's Ken Miles, and he's calling from Shelby American. And remember, back then, telephone rates were charged by the call, and long-distance calls were fairly expensive. And we talked for a bit about my letter, and was I still interested? Yes, I'm very interested. And was I interested in the competition model or the street model? And well, probably more a street model. And it's okay, how can we make an appointment to get you down to Williams Ford right there in West Hartford, which had a Cobra on display on the floor? And that's when I gave it up, and I said, "Well, Mr. Miles, I think you better talk to my dad." And my dad got on the phone and listened very intently to Ken Miles and his description of everything. And They said, okay, he made an appointment. And several days later, we went to Williams Ford. Now, Williams Ford was one of the bigger Ford dealers in the area. It was right in West Hartford Center. And they had taken some split rail fencing that they had left over from the Mustang introduction in April, where they had a Mustang corral with fencing and kind of hay bales to keep the Mustang, the first one they got, corralled in. And since now they were starting to get Mustangs on a regular basis, by June, they put this Cobra in there in the corral. So we got to look at it and see it. And Dad, the more and more he talked to the salesman, he finally allowed, okay, let's go in the corral and look it all over. And Dad was very interested. I knew he'd had a couple of Corvette brochures, but we were a family of 6, Mom and Dad and 4 kids. So a 2-seat sports car, I'm not sure if that was in the cards. But Dad went along, got all the salesman's information, got we already had the pricing, got the information on the car, and then on the way home came the big letdown. The Cobra was not going to work because it only had 2 seats. It really wasn't practical. But more than that, it didn't have roll-up windows. It had side curtains like old British sports cars that you had to take on and off when you put the top up. Well, when you erected the top and put it on for rain protection. And then finally, my dad had been an aeronautical design engineer. That's what he studied in college. And he worked at Lockheed on the P-38 and on the Hudson bomber. And one thing he knew was that a stressed aluminum skin, like what formed the bodywork of the Cobra, could be easily dented. So for those 3 reasons, there was no Cobra in our future. But I have the memories. I still have the brochures, 2 letters from Ken Miles, and the memories of that phone call.